Hello viewers, this is your host Sushil. Welcome to the video and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, this video has been a long time wait for my subscribers and well, finally it is coming up. So this video is going to cover up the topics of VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP in Excel. This video, though I have not segregated it into these subparts, it will cover the fundamentals, syntax, applications, either individual application or nested application, and nevertheless, I'll be covering understanding of do's and do not do's in this video. So not spending much time of ours, let's get on to the video. And there it is, we are on the Excel worksheet page. In this worksheet, we have got a database wherein the employee increment has been defined here. So let us work upon VLOOKUP first and let me explain you what is VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is vertical lookup. Lookup word as it explains is a search of certain value in some database or in some table array or a table in Excel. There is something called as table in Excel, which subsequently I'll explain you why to use, how to create, and everything else. So before I start up with the VLOOKUP demonstration, let me give you a few fundamental requirements of VLOOKUP. In VLOOKUP, a value is looked up or searched up into a table array, and that lookup value has always got to lie onto the left side of the array table array where those or where the search will happen. The next thing, the table array has to be chosen from which the search value will be searched from left to right, and prior to left to right it will be searched from top to bottom. So the search will happen from column 1, then column 2, then column 3, and so on. And this column 1, column 2, column 3 of the columns in the array are the column index number. So let's begin with the example here. So here for employee ID, say E2024. Let me go ahead and explain you how to use VLOOKUP for this value. So is equal to VLOOKUP. As I said, the first thing to be chosen is the lookup value. The lookup value here is the employee ID E2024. The next thing what I need to choose is the table array. So I'm choosing the table array from B2 to C23. I will lock it up with function F4. Then the next thing what it requires is a value which I require to return as a result. So now in this case, let us return the initial salary, and as we count from left to right, column B will be the first column, then C will be the second column. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is the fifth column. F returns the salary, initial salary. So now the column index value here will be 5. And next thing what it asks is either true value or a false value. The false value corresponds to the exact value. False value can also be represented by a 0 here, or a true value corresponds to approximate match, and true value is represented by 1 here. So I'm going to choose false value here, close the parenthesis, and say enter. So now before I enter, let me explain you. Now the VLOOKUP value, that is I7, that is E2024, appears in the table array in the first column as I explained you on the leftmost column. Then it searches into the array that begins from cell B2 up to cell G23. It goes on from top to bottom, so it will search for E2024 from column B, then column C. But certainly here it lies into the column B, there in the cell B3. So then it will return the next thing is the value corresponding to this lookup value from the column index number 5, that is column F, and value there corresponding to this employee ID is 22,500. So when I say enter, there it is, the value of 22,500 appears here. Now friends, if I choose to choose this array, as you see, when I click on the first cell and then go to next cell, on the left side there, very much you see on the screen is the column number and the row number that appears in the table array here. So you see column C here corresponds to second column, and then as and as and when the next columns are chosen, the column number, the index number goes on changing. So this is how the index number of a column can be found out in an array, if at all any times you have doubt. So now if you see the column B here, turns out to be the first column in this array, whereas if you consider a worksheet, Excel worksheet here called VLOOKUP basic, then B turns out to be column number 2. Now let us move on to the next part of this video. Here I am going to demonstrate you from data validation. I have played the data validation. If you want, I'll give you a demo here again. So here I went to data. I chose to choose data validation. First of all, I'll clear all. Then I'm going to choose the list. So now what list I need to choose is the employee ID list here. I'm choosing this employee ID list, say enter and say OK. As soon as I do that, I find out the drop down here for the employee IDs here. And now I'm going to choose the employee ID 2950. Okay. So now I can also go here, or before I do that, now let me apply the VLOOKUP formula here. VLOOKUP formula. So there it is. Now the lookup value is the cell here, that is I13. What next I need to do is I need to choose the array, and there it is. The array has been chosen. I'm locking it with function F4. The next thing what I need is the column index, that is column index 2. I'll type 2 here because column index 2 consists the names of the employees, and then I want the exact value, so I'm going to put up 0 here, close parenthesis and enter. So now right now it says not applicable. The reason being that the employee ID is not available here, and so it does not search anything as a value, and thus returns nothing as a value. So if I choose here the value E2354, it corresponds to Mr. Rakesh Bedi here. If I choose to say 2950, it corresponds to Mr. Trace here, and so on and so forth. Now you see, as I go to the next cell here, I can choose here to put in the column index value number 3, and so forth. I will get the values here. So the lookup value here is J13. That is the problem I created. I should have locked up the I3 value here, so that this value would have been the lookup value. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to put I13 as the lookup value, and there it is. As soon as I put it, it comes up here. So now friends, you must have realized that as I move on to the right side, every time the column index value increases by 1. So now either I keep on typing this in every cell, or there is another crude method of numbering the column index there and then go on finding out the corresponding values of that column index by using this value. So now here I'm going to say is equal to VLOOKUP. There it is. I have chosen the VLOOKUP. I have chosen the lookup value here, and this time I am not going to make a mistake. I'll just lock it by function F4. Once done, then what next? I have to choose the array. The array I'm going to choose and lock as ever. So once the array is locked up, once the array is locked up, now what I'm going to do is, rather than choosing the column index, I'm going to choose the value here from the column index. Let me go back and choose the array once again. There it is. Lock it. Then the column index. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the cell here for the column index. So the value corresponding to this cell will be taken as a column index. Give comma and then choose 0 as false and enter and say enter. So there is John Trace has popped up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this function and apply it to the adjacent cells here. And as I do that, there are the values of the ratings. There is a value of the initial salary. So if I go and click here, what it does here is the column index here, it chooses from this cell, and it has got value of 5. So the column index 5 value returns in the result cell. Now if you see on the rightmost cell here, there is no value. The reason being that the experience whatever is representing or corresponding to this employee is null, and so any null value or any blank value will always be represented by 0 by the returning value here, right? Now here it is the exact value. If I choose here a true value or approximate value, there it is, it will give a null there itself. Fine. So this is a crude method of doing it. One can choose to dull this font so that those are not visible to the audience, and there it is. Or one can even choose to hide those cells. Well, now let me give you a better demo here of finding out a value of employee. So I'm going to choose this employee value here, and now in the next cell I'm going to use command columns nested with VLOOKUP. How do I do that? Let me give you a demo here. So when I say VLOOKUP and I choose this value as input value or a lookup value, the next thing what I do is I choose the range. Once the range is chosen, I lock it. Once locked, the next thing is now I'm going to use the function columns, columns. So this is what I'm going to use. If you choose the function column, then it will return you the column value of the column worksheet and not the column from the array. Whereas columns will return you the column index value from the array. So let's choose column S. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose the column from here. So what I do require is second one. So while doing that, I'm going to choose to lock this first B2 value function F4, and I'm not going to lock the C2 value as I'm going to drag the function to the right side cells. Once the columns is done, the column index value will be chosen from this. So once done, I'm going to choose the false option here and close the parenthesis and say enter. So now I get the exact value corresponding to employee ID E2024. The name is Jessica Thomas, and when I choose to pull the function onto the right side, there it is, the value of the remaining cells appear here. So this is how one can use the column index value by using the columns function nested with VLOOKUP. Now VLOOKUP can be used with wildcards. Let me give you a demo here. So when I say is equal to VLOOKUP, and now I'm going to choose employee ID for E3000 plus. So let me choose the value of lookup value, that is text. So I'm putting it in the double quotes, and I'm going to use here the wildcard asterisk. I'm going to close it. So now what is the lookup value here is the employee ID is E3000 plus or 3000, and whatever value comes up will be searched through the wildcard from the array here. So this is the array to search from. Then now what I do need to return here, let me return the column index 2, that is the name of the employee, or let me return column index 1 itself, that is the employee code itself, and then the exact value. There it is. So when I enter it, now watch well, keep your eye on the value it selects. It has selected the value E3214. So if you go into the table array and see, this is the first value which appears as a value of employee code E3000 plus. So that is the value it has chosen. The reason being that VLOOKUP always search the first matching value from top to bottom, as I explained you in the beginning, and hence in this table array the first value here is E3214. Now if at all I go here and I opt to choose to sort these values from A to Z, there it is. As soon as I sort it, you see the value here from the result value of VLOOKUP has changed from the earlier E3214 to E3155. The reason being that in the sorted value, the first value that appears is this one. So if I again go here and say sort it from Z to A, there it is. Now the value that first appears here is E3236. That is what VLOOKUP returns here as output. So now sorting array plays an important role in VLOOKUP. This is very much important for anyone to understand what exactly is VLOOKUP and how it works. Fine. So I'm going to do Control Z so that I go back to the original database values, and there it is. So now in this sheet we have learned a few things. Let us go to the next sheet and learn few more things. So now, as I said, VLOOKUP can be used for between the same sheet or multiple worksheets or multiple workbooks. Let me give you a demo here. So now in this cell or in this column H here, we have got values for the experience. The remaining values of employee ID are matching with the database which we had in our earlier worksheet here, and the experience column also appears here. But now in this database, we got some other values like increment, revised salary, and others, and hence we need to add experience. We look up, there it is. Once done, I chose this as a input value. Then I went over here to choose the range. I locked the range. Then I knew the sixth column is what is of my interest and the false value is of my interest. Once done, I chose it and said enter. As soon as I did that, the experience value appeared here. Since I have not locked the VLOOKUP first value, that is the lookup value, there it is. I got all the values of the experience from the earlier worksheet, and hence I have given you a demo as how VLOOKUP can be used across sheets, across workbooks. Now what is the significance of false and true value? Let me give you an example here. Now here is a column of increment and here is a table of the rule for the rating versus increment. So based on this rating, the increment value will be appended. So let me look up, we'll use VLOOKUP here. There it is. So what I'm going to look up is this value, and where do I need to look up is in this table array. In this table array, I'm going to lock it first of all. What is the column of my interest, or what is the column index that I need to use? That is the increment. So it is column number 2. And if I choose to give the exact value, that is 0, false corresponds to 0, and I say enter, it gives me the value not applicable. So if I go and propagate that formula for the remaining cells, there's only one cell here where the increment value appears as a numerical value, and that corresponds to the rating of 4. So if we go to this table and see, the increment corresponding to rating 4 is 1200, and that's why it returns 1200. So what has happened here is every time the rating value was compared over there in the VLOOKUP array and then nothing was found and cell, that's why not applicable value was returned as a result. Now why did this happen is the reason we chose to have exact value. So if now I choose to have a approximate value that is true and it corresponds to the number 1, there it is. As soon as I put it, I get the increment value as 0. So what the VLOOKUP has done is 1.2 has been compared over here. It chose to nearest value, approximate value, that is 1. So the value it has already been crossed up. It will not choose 2 as an approximate value, even if the rating turns out to be 1.8 or 1.9. It will always choose 1. That is here, and the corresponding increment value is 0. That is what it has written here. So now if I decide to propagate this function to the other cells, there it is, the increment values are popped up, and those correspond to the ratings. Those are approximately matched with the table array here. Now we have got the increment. Now it does not require anyone to be a very qualified person to understand that initial salary plus increment is equal to the revised salary, and it is of the most importance and significance to every employee in a company, irrespective of which your company it is. So now I'm going to show you nesting of VLOOKUP with some function. Let us do the nesting right away. So if I go here and say is equal to VLOOKUP, I choose this corresponding to this rating. What should be the increment that is to be paid? That is from this array, and from this array, which column of interest is to be chosen, that is number 2, and now I'm going to choose the approximate or the approximate match, and that's why I chosen 1. So now this VLOOKUP will return me the increment value, but no, I'm not only interested in the increment value, but I'm interested in the revised salary, which is the sum of the increment value plus the initial salary. So for that, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to append or next a sum function here. There it is. I have opened the parenthesis. I go over here and say plus the initial salary. So now I'm going to sum up the increment value with the initial salary, and the initial salary corresponds to E3 cell here. So I'm going to choose it and close parenthesis and say enter. As soon as I do that, I see that the increment plus this initial salary has been added up to give the resultant revised salary. But well, I have done it without using the increment column, that is column F. So what I have done here is I used VLOOKUP nested with some function and found out the revised salary. As soon as I propagate the function downward, I get the revised salary for every employee. And if one wants to cross check it, if you have this initial salary with the increment added up, you will certainly get this revised salary. So one can opt to hide this increment value and only propagate the initial salary versus the revised salary here to the management and to the employees. So this is how one can choose the nesting of multiple functions. I have given you a very simple demonstration of some function nested with VLOOKUP. In the earlier worksheet, we had seen columns function nested with VLOOKUP. And now let us go to a more complex and more demonstrative demonstration here. Now here the management has decided not only to follow the rating versus increment rule, but also they want to encourage the female employees, and so they have decided to pay 25% extra increment to the female employees. So if we see in this database, we see 5 employees are only female and remaining are male. So these 5 females, provided they meet the rating versus increment rule, they will get 25% extra increment. So now how do we do that? Let me go here and go to the revised salary. So now who is going to get the value of 25% extra increment is the females. So let me use the sum function. Now in sum, what is the number that is to be added? That is the initial salary that corresponds to the cell F3 here. Now to that F3 cell, what is the condition for the increments? So now I'll have to use the nested function if. I'm going to use it. So in if, what I'm going to do is here, first is the logical test. So what is the logical test? If the cell D3 is equal to female, that is F. So now I'm going to use inverted quotes, double inverted quotes, and F. So if at all the employee is a female, this is logical test, then what? Then the increment value, that is VLOOKUP, I'm going to use VLOOKUP rating. This is rating is this much, and it corresponds to the array table value here. I'm going to log those values. So if at all it meets this, return the increment value from the second column index, and it has to be approximate. I'm going to say approximate. I'm going to close parenthesis. So this will be the value if true, but no, it's not the only value of increment. The female employees are to get 1.25% or 25% extra, that is 1.25 times the increment. So this will be the logic value if true, and if it is false, then what? Then they will get only the increment that will correspond to the rule of rating versus the increment. So it will be this value, correct? So now I'm done with the formula, and there it is. So now if you have understood syntax, so now what does the syntax say? Sum the initial salary with the increment. So now if the female employee meets the criteria of the increment rating or the rating versus the increment entitled, then the true value is 1.25 times the regular increment, or otherwise it's the regular increment. There it is. So now with this person, though being female, her rating is 1.2. That means the increment corresponding to 1 was 0, and that's why 0 into 1.25 turned out to be 0, and so the increment value here turned out to be 0. And that's why the initial salary corresponds or is equal to the revised salary. What I'm going to do is I'm going to propagate this formula here. Now let us go to the next female here, that is Helena Andrew. She has got a rating of 2.8. So if we check here, 2.8 corresponds to 2 and the increment value corresponds to 650. So if I go and append a formula here, so 650 into 1.25 is what increment she should get. So there it is. So she is entitled to get an increment of 812.50 and her initial salary is this much. So the total revised salary should be is equal to this plus the increment value. And there it is. So 18316.5 is what she is entitled to get, and that is correct. So our VLOOKUP formula has applied correct in nesting with if and sum. So here three functions have been nested up together to give us the resultant values here. Now, friends, I use a simple array table here and not a table in Excel. I always say that it is recommended to use a table. And now let me give you a reason of why we should use it that way. So now I'm going to just remove this cell value from here and convert this into a table. I have explained in many of my earlier demonstrations as to how to create a table. Let me do it once again here. So if I go to say insert, if you see I have just clicked one of the cells from this database, and when I say insert table, by default Excel being an intelligent one, it chooses to take up the cell values which are corresponding to the array table. Now I'm going to choose my table has header so that this first row is considered as a header and not as a part of the table. And when I say OK, a table is created here. So if you see here, table name is 2 here. I'm going to say INC, that is I am changing the name of this table, and here it is, the table is ready for our usage. Now I'm going to redo this values here. So I'm going to use somewhat sum the first value, that is the initial salary. Now if you see in earlier case we had chosen the cell value, now it is choosing a cell value from the table. That is the difference. So it is saying at the rate initial salary plus what next is I'm going to use the if value or if function. Now if corresponds to logical test, the first logical test is d3 is equal to, now when I say d3 it says at the rate gender is equal to f in double inverted commas, and when this is met, then what it is, then the value true, that is we look up what, we look up for the rating. Now you see at the rate rating where to look up in the array here. I'm going to lock the array with function f4. Once the array is locked, what do I need to index the column to? I'm going to index it to column 2, and I'm going to choose the true values, that is 1, close VLOOKUP value. But now the value, as I explained earlier, should be multiplied by 1.25 to yield the 25% extra income, and this is a value if true, and not if it is not true, then what is the value if false, that is VLOOKUP, that is VLOOKUP. Again I'm going to choose the rating, give comma, choose database here, log the database here, and index on column 2 with values approximate, and close the parenthesis, and say enter. There is one more parenthesis that is missing up. I'm going to add the parenthesis and say enter. There it is. Now as soon as I said enter, you must have noticed the formula got appended to all the cells in column G in the table. This is the first advantage of table. The speed of calculation has multiplied like anything, and I did not have to propagate the function or formula to the remaining cells. This is the first use. The second use I will demonstrate to you right away. Now if at all there is a new employee which has been added to this list, say 3245, her name is say Sunita, she is a female, so F, her rating is say 3.5. Now as soon as I say tab, see what happens. You must have noticed as soon as I say tab, in the revised salaries column in cell G24, you must have seen the value 1125 that corresponds to is equal to this rating 3.5 corresponds to the increment 3 or the rating 3, and the increment value corresponding to rating 3 is 900. So 900 into 1.25, that is 1125, that is the increment value has popped up immediately in the revised salary cell. And now if at all her initial salary was say 25,000, then it returns the revised salary of this employee in immediately. So any addition or anything that is appended to the table subsequently immediately reveals the value. Suppose the HR department has moderated the ratings and it has been changed to say 2.8. Immediately the value of her increment and the revised salary has got updated in the Excel sheet here. So this is the use of table. So always use tables in Excel whenever VLOOKUP is used up. So now one more thing I like to show you here. So now in this case, this rating value here is 1.2, which is numerical, and it's searched up in the array table for the corresponding numerical value. Suppose this is converted into a text value. When I append a comma apostrophe there, not a comma apostrophe there, it changes the numerical value to text value, and as a result, if you have seen here, the revised salary value, which is the resultant or result output, has got converted into not applicable. The reason being that now what has happened, the cell here is a text and the cell which we are checking is numerical. So those two formats do not match, and as a result, VLOOKUP says or returns a value that a rating corresponds to this value does not appear into the array here. So the lookup value does not appear into the table array here, and so there is nothing to return, and that's why it says not applicable. Well, now let us move on to the summary of whatever we have learned till now. I'm just going to revise whatever I talked or I told or conveyed you till now. So now VLOOKUP function can be used within one sheet, multiple sheets, that is multiple worksheets, and multiple workbooks in Excel. Value of lookup should always be in the first column in the range or array, that is the leftmost column. Next thing, VLOOKUP always works from top to bottom and left to right. So mind well, it's top to bottom first and then left to right. VLOOKUP will match the first value only that appears in the array. That is what it was. Right? Next thing is VLOOKUP is not case sensitive. Good. VLOOKUP function does not recognize numbers and text represented in numbers as being equal. This is what I demonstrated just now to you. So a text format does not look up for a numerical array format. Those will not represent the same values. VLOOKUP works with data range or data array and Excel table too, but it is recommended to use table in Excel. Now, VLOOKUP returns 0 when the result in a lookup table is a blank or null cell. VLOOKUP can be used with wildcard characters. This is what I demonstrated. So all these good things I have spoken about VLOOKUP, but well, there are some shortcomings in VLOOKUP. As I said, the VLOOKUP search value or lookup value has always to lie on the left side of a column in an array table, from which the result value will return. This is a real hindrance or shortcoming. So if at all a lookup value lies onto the right side and the return value lies in any of the columns on the left side of that lookup value, VLOOKUP fails, it gives error. So to overcome this error, one can use index and match functions together in combination in Excel. Certainly, I will create a video on this and publish it in due course of time. But till then, VLOOKUP can be practiced and used. VLOOKUP has turned out to be the most popular function in Excel all the time. Now, apart from VLOOKUP, there is HLOOKUP, wherein horizontal lookup has to be done. I will just walk you through this function. VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP do not have much difference in them, except for a couple of them. In VLOOKUP, we are looking out for the column index number, whereas in HLOOKUP, that is horizontal lookup, the row index number will play a significant role. In VLOOKUP, as I said, the search is from top to bottom and then left to right, whereas in HLOOKUP, the search is from left to right and then top to bottom. Well, I'll give you a demo here. In this database here, I have used this database to convert it into a transpose database by applying HLOOKUP. How do one use HLOOKUP? Let me give a demo here. Is equal to HLOOKUP. There is a function. So in HLOOKUP, what is a lookup value? So I'm going to choose this lookup value. I will lock it first. F4. Then what is the table array that I need to look out for? This is a table array. I have chosen this table array, lock it. Then what next? Now it says row index number. So now I'm going to use the rows function, ROWS. Do not use the row function. I'm using the rows function. Now how do I choose the array here? So now I'm going to choose this array by choosing 1 and 2. But first of all, let me get this first value. So I'm going to use this array as C2 and again choose the same one. While doing that, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lock the first cell C2 and leave the second cell open so that it goes on indexing. So there it is. When I do that, it is going to count the rows from C2 to C2. That is only one row, and it is going to return one value for the index. And now let me choose to return the exact value, that is 0. And when I say enter, there it is. I see the value E2024. I'm going to pull this formula over here onto the right side, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the cell value as, if I click it, there it is. So it got changed from C2 to D2 as row array, which is certainly not correct. It should be C2 to C3, and that is how I changed it. So now it is going to index the rows from C2 to C3, that is 2 rows, and return the row index value as 2, and there it is. I get the value Jessica Thomas. The same thing I did here. Now as soon as I go here, I double click and I pull it down over here, the row index here, there it is, number 3, and so on and so forth. I'll just give you a demo here. Here I'm going to again change the row index to 4, here the row index to 5, and pull it to the next cell, and there it is. The row index has changed to 6. So there it is. This is how I have used HLOOKUP to transpose the values from column C into row 13. So friends, with this, I hope you are very much clear about the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. You need to practice these two functions. But well, HLOOKUP is not that popular and that frequently used, but VLOOKUP is very frequently used. So I request you to get your hands very much clean onto this function and make the best use of VLOOKUP. It is one of the most influential function in Excel, and there are many users who still struggle to use them in their day-to-day work. Well, with this advice, I will come to the closure of this video. I hope you have liked this video and it has been a useful one for you. Certainly, your own practice will be handy. If you have got any requirements of any topics that I need to cover in my videos, please do put up in the comments of this channel. Register your likes with your thumbs up at the channel page. If you are not subscribed, please do subscribe this channel for many other videos which are very useful and worthy watching. Your comments are most respected. Please do put up your comments at the channel page. Soon I'll be with you with my next video and more information and knowledge to share. Till then, take care. Bye bye.